Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lunchroom Syndicate. Zunker reacts, Christopher reacts, whatever you want to call me. I'm reacting this time to the NHL playoffs. The Jacksonville Jaguars are not in it. They collapsed hard. Although, did they collapse harder than the Philadelphia Eagles? We'll talk about them soon. But in these reacts, I'm going to react to each round of the playoffs as they are. And the first round is the wild card round. And let me just tell you, it was full of just really shit games. But first, as you can see on the score on the list here, the Houston Texans absolutely demolishing the Cleveland Browns, 45-14. I'm not surprised Houston won. I am a bit surprised to see Cleveland just roll over like that. Cleveland, the yardages were about the same, 356, 324. Cleveland had good third down convergencies at 7 for 15. They went for fourth downs, especially late after they already were out of it. They went 0 for 4, which isn't great. The biggest problem they have is they were able to rush the ball, which is, since Nick Chubb's been out, it's kind of been a common problem for them. Turn the ball over, common problem for them. And when their defense doesn't play well, which oftentimes on the road they haven't, they've often lost. Cleveland this year was 3-5 away from home, now 3-6 including playoffs, and they've been blown out more often than not. David Njoku had a good game, 7 catches, 93 yards. Credit to Houston. C.J. Stroud is just an absolute beast. They're throwing 3 touchdowns in the first half. He really didn't do much in the second half, but the Texans didn't really need to at that point. Again, they had back-to-back pick sixes after halftime. It was only a 10-point game at halftime, so the Browns were still in it. And then the back-breaking back-to-back interceptions. Houston only had 3 offensive drives in the second half, which is kind of incredible when you think about it. But they didn't need those drives, and they did get 1 touchdown out of it on offense, and obviously the 2 pick sixes. Cleveland just couldn't get out of their own way. But Houston playing real well. C.J. Stroud's having maybe, I don't know. I try not to be to throw too much hyperboles out there, trying not to be too crazy exaggerated, but is he having one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time? It's hard to argue that, and I haven't done the research to say that for sure, but man, Houston's gonna be a tough out. They're well coached and they have a quarterback, and when you have those 2 things, you're on your way to something special. And as a Jags fan, I'm very saddened by that. Again, after the Super Bowl, I'm going to do an off-season video about the Jags, how I felt overall, and what I would like to see some things they do. I'm going to keep it relatively generic, but some of the things I want to see them do. In the meantime, Cleveland didn't get 1 sack. Myles Garrett only had 1 sack since he got injured. I think his injury was way worse than people have been letting on. I know teams try and game plan around him. Obviously, I don't know what this was, game plan around him, but you could tell he was not feeling the same way he was prior to that. And I wonder if that's going to end up costing him the Defensive Player of the Year. Not this game, because they vote on these awards before the playoffs, but I'll be curious to see what happens with that. But Houston looked great. Their defense played well. Next week it's going to be a tough week for them. We'll talk about the divisional round later, but that's a big win for them. Moving on into the week. Oopsie. Oh yeah. No. Why? Well, it's in the wrong order. Well, it's in the wrong order, but we'll do it this way. What is going on here? Yeah, I don't give a shit. Talk about. I was gonna go in order, but I apparently didn't put them in order, so go me. The Green Bay Packers absolutely crushing the Dallas Cowboys, 48-32. A game that wasn't even that close. This game was a 32-point game with 6.5 minutes left, and Dallas got a couple of quick touchdowns, but wow. The only road team to win this week, by the way, which is also kind of incredible. But Green Bay becomes the first number 7 seed to win the playoffs. Grant, we've only had the number 7 season for 4 years now, or 3 years, or whatever it is. Although, something to remember is that we there was an 8-team playoff at one point, like in the strike shortened season. I think 82, but we don't. I don't think a 7 seed won that year, but Green Bay looked unbelievable, especially offensively. Jordan Love. I don't know how Green Bay does it. That was incredible. What Green Bay did. Again, this game was 48-16 with just a few minutes, with about half a quarter left. Wow. I mean, granted, I don't know what happened to Dallas' defense in this game, but they just completely shit the bed. And that was crazy. Dak Prescott didn't look good. Nobody looked good in the Dallas game. You could tell. The announcer said something like along the lines of that. Matt LaFleur, the coach for the Packers, said that they are playing with pressure. Dallas is, and you could tell that in this game that Dallas was not comfortable, and Green Bay was loose. They had nothing to play for, or they had nothing to lose. They have everything to play for, and when you have a team like that embraces that, they're hard to beat. And Green Bay's been playing so well lately, outside of the weird loss to Tommy DeVito, and the Giants. It was a good win for them. I still worry about their defense at times, but that could be a fear for another day. Aaron Jones looking like a man possessed as he's had the last few weeks. 21 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns by him, to go along with the 3 touchdowns thrown by Jordan Love. And it was amazing how much separation receivers were getting. This team has come together at the right time. They are officially a good team, and Bears and Vikings and Lions fans everywhere. How do the Packers keep doing it? And I can't remember where I seen it, so I can't credit it properly like I want to. But one thing I did see was one of the reasons why they can do this. They could sit Aaron Rodgers for 3-4 years, Jordan Love for 3-4 years. They don't have a true ownership. It's owned by the fans, which it is and it isn't. So they're able to be patient without that overwhelming force coming down on them that is pretty consistent with some other organizations. So, they're almost like a built-in cheat code for quarterback development in some ways, although we've seen quarterbacks who sit and aren't good. But it's impressive to see what Green Bay has done, and now it looks like they have their 3rd consecutive franchise quarterback. And Green Bay, that was impressive. As far as Dallas goes, I don't know if they end up firing McCarthy as of this recording. They didn't. I can't imagine Jerry Jones is too happy. This is another embarrassing loss. And this one's at home, a place they hadn't lost since week 1 of last year. So, and they had looked good all year. As a matter of fact, I made a prediction. I thought Dallas could make it this year. I bought into this team. I don't like Dallas, but I'm like, I think Dallas might make Super Bowl this year. This feels like their year, and they completely shit the bed. So I don't know where to go from there. If you're Dallas, 12-5 the last 3 years, 1 playoff victory, and multiple losses, and embarrassing losses, or at least something embarrassing in the games. I mean, it's not embarrassing losing Niners last year, but it is embarrassing the way they end up losing the game. Same with the prior year; they lost to the Niners in an embarrassing way. Oh shit, I just kicked the damn table. So yeah, Green Bay, impressive performance, maybe the most impressive of the weekend, and the weekend full of domination. Green Bay moves on to the divisional round of the playoffs. Moving on to our next game in my list, the closest game and the only game that was a 1-score game. The Lions beat the Rams, exercise the demons of no playoff victories in over 30 years, since 1991, against their old chump, Matthew Stafford, no less, and the Rams. These two teams are linked in so many ways now because of that trade, and it was a impressive victory in a lot of senses because you could tell the weight was on the Lions, especially in the second half, but they held on. It was a good hold on. Their defense is not good, especially on the back end. Puka Nacua had 9 receptions, 181 yards. He was virtually unguardable at times in this game. Nobody else. And then, it was incredible. The biggest difference in this game, and this is one of the reasons why I think sometimes if you have inside the 5 and it's 4th and goal, you probably should go for it. The Rams went 0 for 3 in terms of touchdowns in the red zone, kicking 3 field goals. The Lions went 3 for 3 for touchdowns in the red zone, scoring obviously all 3 touchdowns. That's the difference of the game. 1-point game, and that is a big reason why. And in my opinion, oops, I don't know what the hell I hit there. In my opinion, that is massive for the Lions. Honestly, there wasn't really a great go for it situation for the Rams. Admittedly, I think one was a 4th and goal from the 6. That's questionable. The other 2 were 4th and 8s. They weren't goal to goal. So the field goals were important, but it also shows why scoring touchdowns is so important in the red zone. And the Lions did that, including when was it? I thought they went for a 4th and goal, including a 4th and 1 from the 2. It wasn't quite a 4th and goal, but a 4th and 1 from the 2. And they could easily kick the field goal there. It could make sense, but they ended up going for it and getting a touchdown to Sam Laporta. Really his only contribution in this game. He was a bit hurt, obviously, but impressive performance again. Both these teams were really good. If you watch this game, they're both really good, but they were both flawed in their own ways. Matthew Stafford did unbelievable things, going 25 for 36, 367, and 2 TDs. Jared Goff had a very efficient day himself, 22 for 27 for 277 and a 1 TD. The Lions were able to run the ball at times pretty well. David Montgomery had 14 for 57 for a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs only had 8 carries, 25 yards, but also had a touchdown. And Jahmyr Gibbs did more through the air, 4 for 43. David Montgomery had an incredible 11-yard reception for a first down on the final drive of the game. The Rams were able to run the ball with Kyren Williams. I think they should have done it more, honestly. They only gave him 13 carries for 61 yards. Yes, I know Puka Nacua, and it really worked out for them in some ways, but maybe now in the red zone, they should have ran him more or ran somebody more, because they kind of went away from it in the red zone. That was one of the reasons why they kind of failed. Both teams had a fumble that was not lost. Neither team turned the ball over. There was 5 total sacks in the game. Stafford sacked twice and took some big hits in this game. And Goff was sacked 3 times. And Goff almost had the infamous play of the game, the bad one where he was getting sacked and shoved the ball with 2 hands backward for no reason to the tight end. That was nowhere near it. That could have been really bad, but luckily for the Lions, that didn't happen. Now the Lions get to host, because we talked about the Cowboys losing. Excuse me. Because the Cowboys lost, they will host a 2nd straight game next week. I think I saw it first time in their history, or first time in, I don't know. Either way, they will host a divisional round for the right to go to the NFC Championship game, and this is a very winnable game for them, even though the team they're playing has been playing well lately as well. We're not that far away from a Lions NFC Championship game appearance. That's kind of incredible. But the Lions get a big win here. The Rams, they were surprised to many, surprised to me. Stafford's still playing at a high level. This team looks like they're going to be a force next year. They got a bunch of cap space. I mean, this team's going to be a force next year in a relatively weak NFC. We don't know what's going to happen to the Cowboys. We don't know it's Philly. Lions and San Francisco seem like the only 2 teams that are guaranteed to be good next year. Maybe you can include Green Bay in that, but there is a spot for the Rams in the upper echelon in the NFC going forward. Great game played by great teams, by good teams. Next up, the game I wanted to talk about earlier, the Miami Dolphins getting crushed by the Kansas City Chiefs in one of the coldest games in NFL history, 26-7. I'm not going to talk about whether this game should have or shouldn't have been played. That's irrelevant to the conversation right now. However, it definitely seemed like the Kansas City Chiefs were ready for it, were more well coached, and seemed like they just wanted it more. This game was not a well played game. There was only 1 turnover in the game. There was 2 turnovers in the game. Both teams lost a fumble. Obviously Tua missed passes left and right. You could tell the wind was affecting him, and a lot of people talk about his arm strength, which sometimes can be overblown. But in this scenario, I think there was some legitimate issues with not being able to get in the win, unlike Patrick Mahomes, who had less of an issue, but still had some issues. But Kansas City had 409 yards of total offense. They played ball control offense more so than ever. and they get a big win at home again. Unfortunately, they go on the road next week, first time in Patrick Mahomes' history. But I think the biggest thing for them, the biggest worry for them, is their consistent inability to score touchdowns in the red zone. They had 6 trips in the red zone this game and only came away with 2 touchdowns. That means they kicked 4 field goals in this game, and they've been kicking a lot of field goals lately. Look, this game, it ended up not being a disaster for them, but like as they get further in the playoffs, that's going to become a problem. We just talked about field goals over touchdowns, or touchdowns over field goals in the Rams-Lions game. What if they score a bunch of field goals against the Bills and the Bills are hot? I just gave away a game, but this game, Kansas City never really were threatened, and honestly, this is not a surprise. I mean, Miami did get one long touchdown to Tyreek Hill, and that was about it. So another disappointing end for the Miami Dolphins. I don't think they're going to make too many big changes, but I do think 2024 pressure's going to ramp up a bit on this team, and I'm going to be curious to see what they end up doing with the Tua situation, because right now, you need a quarterback to win a Super Bowl, unfortunately, and a great one, and is Tua that? And that's a genuine question. But of course, the reverse of that is, are you guaranteed to find one better than Tua? That's the tough part of any quarterback situation. You can sit there and be like, Tua Tagovailoa is not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. It's true. But are you guaranteed to find one better where they're at right now? And that's the tough part. But moving forward, that's a question that the Miami Dolphins have to ask themselves in the offseason and going forward. They can go one more year with Tua on the fifth-year option, which I think is fine, depending on contract situations. But Kansas City did move on in relatively easy fashion. Speaking of relatively easy fashions, I have these in order again. The Philadelphia Eagles complete their pretty historic collapse by getting just their doors blown off by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 32-9. This was an embarrassing performance by the Philadelphia Eagles on both sides of the football. They're defensively, it seemed like they didn't care. They missed probably 40 tackles in this game. It felt like it seemed like every play they missed one or two. They look like they get a big play, and the guy just, never mind, I'm gonna go for a first down or for a long touchdown, or missed assignments, blown assignments. This was an embarrassing performance by the Philadelphia Eagles, and honestly, Jalen Hurts did not play overly well as well. He had looks like solid stats, 25 for 35 for one touchdown with a damaged finger. He only ran one time for 5 yards. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but it is. Baker Mayfield made look like one of the best quarterbacks in the league against the terrible Eagles defense. The one positive for the Eagles, they did get the Mayfield 4 times this game for 30-yard sacks, so they were getting pressure, which is something they had been struggling with as well, but that back end was pretty terrible. Devonta Smith, despite being about the only good wide receiver on the field for the Eagles, still had a monstrous game with 8 for 148. He was almost unguardable, but it was about the only one that was unguardable. And other than that, they just got railroaded by the Buccaneers, and Buccaneers defensively, there was no answers for the Eagles. Buccaneers looked good in this game. I do contribute that, admittedly, to a lot of just the issues that the Eagles are having. I'm going to be curious to see what happens this offseason. I think it would be a mistake moving on from Sirianni. Sometimes we have way too much of something goes wrong, fire the guy. Stuff happens, folks. I mean, yes, I realize this is a pretty historic collapse, but we can't just fire guys because of a bad game or a bad stretch of games. So I think it's a mistake to do that, but if he ends up looking for new coordinators, can't really blame him there either, honestly. Although seeing the lack of effort in this game on both sides of the football is concerning, and then the whole A.J. Brown situation, isn't he being a diva? I don't know, but it's still not great. But yeah, Tampa Bay moving on. They'll play Detroit then the winner goes to the NFC Championship game. It's kind of hard to believe that that Tampa Bay or Detroit will be going to the NFC title game. Tampa Bay without Tom Brady. But here we are. Hard to believe. That's going to be a fun matchup. We'll talk about the matchups in just a little bit. But finally, we'll end with another game that this game was a bit closer than the final score indicated, although it probably should. Though it probably shouldn't have been either. The Bills raced to a 21-0 lead, and then Buffalo Bills things happened. The blocked field goal towards the end of the first half that the Steelers got momentum from and got a touchdown on right before the half. And then the game kind of changed from there. The Steelers end up outscoring from that blocked field goal, end up outscoring and out possessing the Bills, but the Bills were good enough to win this game and then had a late touchdown to seal it. The Bills becoming a running team, and it is a very bizarre thing to say. They had 34 rushes for 179 yards in this game, 5.3 yards per carry. Yes, there was a 52-yard run by Josh Allen. Even James Cook had a 4.4 average day, 18 for 79, although he seemed a little hurt at times in this game. And Ty Johnson late in the game was kind of helped seal the deal. So a day that they're throwing still isn't there, although Josh Allen did throw for 3 touchdowns, have 4 touchdowns total in this game. They didn't need the big arm Josh Allen. As far as the Steelers go, Mason Rudolph played fine, especially once he got his feet under him. I still think they make a mistake by not running Jalen Warren more. He just seems like he doesn't go down. He had 4.8 yards per carry on only 8 attempts. You only had 2 catches as well. Seems like a guy you want to go to if you can. For Buffalo, they had more injuries in this game. It's going to be genuinely concerning for them to see all the injuries, and they only got 1 sack in this game, which is not great. Pittsburgh did get more pressure in this game than you would expect without having T.J. Watt, but they didn't get to Allen enough, and they end up only getting 2 sacks in this game, and no turnovers, which was huge for Bills. You know, in a game like this, they would lose if they turned the ball over 2, 3, 4 times, and they had 0 turnovers. Kind of a rare thing for them sometimes, but an important distinction for this game especially. They need to keep that going if they want to win a Super Bowl. But not an easy game for Buffalo there, and especially with all the distractions, the storms, the cold. You know, that was a game that could have been a trap game. You know, but Buffalo, to their credit, goes on to the second round, the divisional round, and will host a game. So let's now move on to that. Let's talk about the games next week. I think we have some really, really good, interesting matchups here. Starting with the AFC, you have the Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be a good one. These two teams played in Week 1, actually. Baltimore demolished Houston, but this is a different Houston team than Week 1. C.J. Stroud really has come on his own. But if there's a team that could stop him, I do think it is Baltimore. They can rush the passer. They do a good job at disguising coverages. They have a great secondary. So if there's a team out there that can really stop the Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud, it's going to be Baltimore. And I worry about Houston's ability to stop the offense for Baltimore, too. I think this game's going to be a shootout ultimately, but I do think Baltimore is going to win. But I think it'll be a good game to watch. And then the Juggernauts take their place as well, as for the third time in 4 years in the playoffs. Kansas City and Buffalo play this time for the first time in Buffalo. I mentioned earlier this is going to be the first time under Patrick Mahomes that the Chiefs have had a road playoff game, which is hard to believe, but the Chiefs will not be at home for the first time with Patrick Mahomes, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game. Neither team is playing as good as you think they should be, which is true. So I give the edge slightly to Buffalo. Buffalo did beat Kansas City earlier this year in Kansas City during their recent run, and I think that game mattered. That game ultimately determined the 2 seed, if you think about it. But yeah, so you know, the 2 years that Buffalo lost, everyone talked about, well, about the game was in Buffalo. Well, now it's time to prove it, Buffalo. You have your opportunity here to prove that at home you can be the better team. I think this is going to be a good one as well. I think it's not going to be overly high scoring. It's not going to be like their epic from a couple years ago. But I do think the Bills pull it off. But no, you know, never discount Patrick Mahomes. I'm definitely not. So if Kansas City did win, I wouldn't be surprised in the least. Now heading over to the NFC side, which is sort of blocked by by the Lunchroom Syndicate symbol. I didn't do a good job on that. The Green Bay Packers travel to San Francisco. Remember a couple years ago, San Francisco traveled to Green Bay in that epic game in Lambeau Field where San Francisco got punt block, and then the game-winning field goal later in the like overtime, and that was, I think, that was when Aaron Rodgers was done. I think in Green Bay, and they should have moved on then, but they ended up keeping Aaron Rodgers for one more year. That was an embarrassing game. So Green Bay, Matt LaFleur has some demons there, but a lot of those guys are also gone already. But Green Bay, super young, has the no pressure on them. Everyone will expect San Francisco to win this game. Green Bay is dangerous in this one. I do think San Francisco wins. By a couple of touchdowns, but this game's closer than the final score indicates. Green Bay keeps it close. Jordan Love looks really good again, but San Francisco moves on to the NFC title game. And we end with the weirdest one of all, Tampa Bay at Detroit. This is a game. I think Detroit should be a heavy favorite in this game, although I don't discount Tampa Bay's defense in this one. And Tampa Bay also has receivers to make Detroit's secondary a nightmare again. Although I think their offensive line could struggle against the defensive line of Detroit, specifically Aiden Hutchinson. I think this could be a good one, but I think Detroit ends up winning this game as well. So I picked all the home teams, which is probably unlikely. But so my championship games predictions officially is Buffalo at Baltimore, Detroit at San Francisco, and it's gonna be good. Gonna be a good round. Hopefully this round has better games than we saw in Week 1, because Week 1 had some pretty shitty games. A lot of blowouts in the first round. Only one game that was in by one score. So I'll be curious to see what happens in round 2. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you are too. I have been Christopher, aka Zunker, with the Lunchroom Syndicate. I will be back next week to talk about my reactions to the divisional round. Until then, everybody, deuces.